Hello, it's Cookies, and this is a long overdue video. I'm sorry I didn't get around to making it in time. I'm hoping for the next patch and for next expansion, obviously, that we definitely get this out sooner. But here it is anyways, a Resto Shaman guide for Mythic Plus. So we're going to start right off with our talents. This is going to be the typical standard talent build that you should be running for Mythic Plus. The only real changes that we ever make to this talent build is going to be the third row right here with Spirit Wolf, Earth Grab Totem, and Static Charge. So I usually default to Static Charge or recommend that because it just helps more with interrupts. It gives you a shorter cooldown on your stun totem, which is really important if you have, if you're pugging and people aren't interrupting things, or if you have, like, I typically take this talent whenever I'm with two, like, ranged DPS. So if we only have one melee DPS in the group, I'll take this because then it just adds to our toolkit of interrupting things more often. But if we have like two melee DPS, then I'll usually, go for one of the other talents. So Spirit Wolf, I would take this in specific dungeons. The dungeons that I can name like off the top of my head right here that it's really good in is going to be like Sanguine Depths for the third and the second and third bosses, where it's basically a good talent to take whenever you're going to take unavoidable, potentially lethal damage to yourself. Things that can't be avoided, but that the whole group takes them anyways, or it's like specifically targeted at you. Spirit Wolf will just give you extra damage reduction to work with. It's also really good in a dungeon like the other side when you have Hakar, and every time he casts his little blood barrier ability, it's going to do unavoidable, pretty lethal damage to the entire group. And then he gains a shield based on how much damage it did. So we can just switch into Ghost Wolf and reduce that amount of damage that we take, which means that he gets a lower shield, which, helps the boss die faster. So stuff like that is where I take Spirit Wolf. Next up, Earth Grab Totem. I would take this on like Spiteful weeks or necrotic weeks where the tank is going to need to kite, or there's things that we need to kite as a group. It just adds more utility and crowd control to those mobs as they are, dying, or as the tank needs to kite away and stuff like that. But otherwise, default to Static Charge. And then the rest of the talents, you pretty much never change them from this. And the reason for that is that Undulation is just purely, we cast so many healing surges and healing waves in Mythic Plus that this talent just gets so much value. And then Echo of the Elements, it's the only damage talent in this row, so it's the only talent that actually gives us more damage, and in theory it gives us more healing too, because we get 2 Cloudburst Totems, which is probably one of our most important abilities for doing healing in Mythic Plus. And then for this row, Ancestral Vigor just gives everybody 10% increased health basically in your group, which is absolutely huge in Mythic Plus because there's so many things in Mythic Plus that we can't really out heal. It's more about surviving them, and then you're totally fine. So having 10% extra health on the entire group makes it that much easier to survive those mechanics. Nature's Guardian it's usually a toss up between Nature's Guardian and Graceful Spirit. This is really just a preference row. There's nothing that's like better than anything else. Nature's Guardian just gives you a extra kind of, it gives you more survivability because it'll heal you whenever you get low HP. And then Graceful Spirit will offer you more utility in being able to cast while moving with Spirit Walker's Grace more often. And then Cloudburst Totem is the clear choice. It is a very, very powerful spell, and we'll be utilizing this to do a lot of our healing in Mythic Plus. And then same thing, we need, like, Shamans really lack any big healing cooldowns like other healers, so Ascendance provides us with just that. It gives us a really big button to press, and when we press it, we're going to be able to do immense healing for the next, 30 seconds or however long that we have Ascendance, plus other things that roll over from Ascendance, like if we're feeding into a Cloudburst Totem and whatnot. So that is pretty much it for the talents. Next up, we will talk about the Covenants and Legendary combos. So for this, I will go ahead and go to Sub Creation, and we will look at Covenants. So as you can see, you can really play any Covenant. Night Fae has like no representation at all, but you can still play it. Basically, Kyrian and Venthyr are going to be the most dominant Covenants, and this is just because Kyrian overwhelmingly does the most amount of damage, and that's all that really matters in high keys is healer damage. But the lower and lower you go from the top keys, the more viable the other Covenants become. So really, if you're watching this guide, pick any covenant that you like, whatever aesthetic you enjoy or playstyle you enjoy. Basically, Kyrian is going to do the most damage. Venthyr is still going to do competitive damage to Kyrian, but it also provides you with much more healing benefits. So if you feel like you need added stability in terms of healing, Venthyr is a great pick because it allows you to still do lots of damage, but also have a really big healing button in Chain Harvest, which is the Venthyr specific ability. And then Necrolord, you're going to miss out on a lot of damage compared to Venthyr and Kyrian, but it still has pretty good healing value compared to the two. So this is just like a general option. Most people would only play this, and you see this in high keys because they don't have a Necrolord for dungeons like Plaguefall or Theater of Pain. And in Plaguefall, I think in high keys, they usually run 2 Necrolords, so this is where the Shaman would swap to Necrolord to help fill that gap. And then Night Fae, it does a lot of healing, but it lacks in a lot of DPS, so that's why you don't see like any representation whatsoever. But it does do great healing, so if you don't care much about your damage, any covenant is totally fine. And the best covenants for healing would be, I would say, Venthyr and probably Night Fae. Okay, and then we have our legendary combos. So here you can see most of the legendary combos that people are running. The first one being Kyrian and Deep Tremor Stone. So Deep Tremor Stone, and this works for any covenant. Deep Tremor Stone is going to be the biggest damage legendary that we can run. It just increases our damage and nothing else. It literally has no other benefits besides increasing our damage. The only annoying part is just the gameplay of it kind of sucks because the Earth Elemental can die really fast if it pulls threat on a lot of mobs, especially in higher keys. But even then, even when the Earth Elemental dies pretty fast, it's still the best damage legendary to run. And then we have Chains of Devastation with Kyrian, which is also a very potent combo because with it gives you basically every time you cast Chain Lightning or Chain Heal, the other spell is free and instant, or it's just instant cast. Which means we'll be casting a lot of Chain Heals, which normally we'd never press Chain Heal except just what's being naturally dropped with our tier bonus that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So this legendary allows us to get our Vesper Totem back up a lot faster than normal, which is a really fun playstyle. And basically, I would recommend Deep Tremor Stone if you want to do the most damage and that's all you care about. And then if you want more of like a flexible option, I think Chains of Devastation is a really, really good legendary to run. So I would recommend this for most people starting out, is to run Chains of Devastation. Other than that, you can see a few other options, but that's going to be our 2 primary options. Is just going to be Chains of Devastation and Deep Tremor Stone. Deep Tremor Stone for full-on damage, Chains of Devastation for a bit more flexibility. And then for a healing legendary, if you want to run a healing legendary, I would probably recommend Jonat's Natural Focus. This is going to be the best healing specific legendary for Mythic Plus because it's going to empower our chain heals every time we cast Healing Wave and Healing Surge, which we'll be pressing a lot. So every time we drop a totem, we'll have a really, really big chain heal, which is very, very nice. So if you want a healing focused legendary, Jonats. If you want something flexible, Chains of Devastation. And if you want purely damage, Deep Tremor Stone. Cool. Next up, we're going to talk about Soulbinds and Conduits. For Soulbinds, you're going to have Mechanicos. That's going to be the pretty much only Soulbind you ever run for Kyrian, and that's just because he reduces the cooldown of Vesper Totem, and that's very, very important. And then for Venthyr, we're going to run Theotar, and that is because with Theotar, I don't actually have the Soulbind up right now, but when you run Theotar, you can either get 3 potency conduits, or you can run the Finesse conduit on his tree, and it will let you have the tea time trait. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but basically every time you chain harvest, you'll give your entire group a big versatility buff. And with Theotar and with Shaman in general, you get to cast chain harvest pretty often. It's usually like a 1 minute cooldown or less. So it's actually very, very, very potent. Okay, and then for stats and trinkets. So for stats, really just equip item level. Don't worry about it other than that. But if you care about min-maxing your damage, and specifically your damage, this is not for healing necessarily. This is just if you want to do as much damage and bring as much benefit as you can as a healer into Mythic Plus, you're going to want about 24-ish% haste. It doesn't have to be perfect, just somewhere in that ballpark of around 24% haste, because that's where your class starts feeling really nice and you get shorter global cooldowns and stuff like that. And then versatility and crit are going to be the other stats that you run. And then you want pretty much 0 mastery on your gear. Versatility will give you more benefit than crit, but crit is also very good for increasing your healing. I would basically say verse is best for dealing damage and surviving things, and crit is best for healing. And then if you don't care about your DPS and you're just trying to do keys and you're just trying to be a healer, then you can really just always equip item level. Don't worry about stats too much. I would still try to get a decent amount of haste, somewhere around 24% still, but after that, the stats do not matter whatsoever. Versatility, it's still the same thing. Versatility is really good for damage and survivability. Crit's really good for healing and a little bit of damage, and then mastery is really good for just raw healing, but it gives you no damage benefit whatsoever. And then for trinkets, if I scroll down a little bit, we can find the trinkets that people are typically running. So the Desagne trinket is really powerful from the raid. That's the like second or third boss on the raid, depending on what order you go. So that's a really powerful trinket to run. It purely does damage. So again, if you're trying to do damage, otherwise the best things to do is to run. I'm actually gonna exit my game because I don't think I'm gonna use my game in here. Or actually, I am. So for trinkets, you're just going to want to get stat sticks. Anything that has main stat on it and then grants you secondary stats as like a passive or active effect is going to be the best. So this is going to be things like Unbound Changeling, Soleil Secret Technique, you have Elegy of the Eternals, you have Soul Letting Ruby, and then you can even go as far as running things like IQD. You can run like this infinitely divisible ooze. There's a few other trinkets, but the idea remains the same. It should always be something with main stat on it, and then it gives you some kind of proc or on use effect that gives you more secondary stats. All right. And then that is it for stats and trinkets. So now we're going to move over to gameplay. So the main thing about gameplay for Rest of Shaman, what we are going to do is basically every time that you crit, this is going to be my tier bonus right here that's stacking up. So if I just cast some healing spells, you'll see it. It's going to be a little slow because I'm only casting on myself instead of multiple people. But it's just this buff that stacks up to, it goes up to 50 stacks. We don't really need to pay attention to it though. So I'll just preface this with that the tier bonus does not really change our gameplay very much at all. The only thing that matters is that we can just be mindful of how many stacks we have, and that's how we know if our chain heal is going to be, you know, like the more stacks we have, the more chance there is for our next chain heal to be pretty big. But it really plays itself because every time you drop a totem, it's going to cast a chain heal and consume those stacks. So we don't actually need to cast chain heal. We should never be hard casting chain heal like this. We should always just let our totems do the job. So Cloudburst totem drops a chain heal. You have Healing Tide totem drops a chain heal. Mana Tide totem drops a chain heal. Spirit Link drops a chain heal. So like we'll just naturally get chain heals by just pressing our totems regularly. So that should be your goal, is just pressing things like Cloudburst totem regularly so that it consumes these tier bonus stacks. Other than that though, you can pretty much ignore the tier bonus completely. And then as far as our healing rotation goes, so this is going to be how do you prioritize your healing in Mythic Plus. So the first major thing that you need to be doing is upkeeping Riptide and Cloudburst Totem. So that means keeping Riptide on cooldown, as you can see here. So we keep Riptide on cooldown as much as possible. And then the next thing that we should be doing after that is casting Cloudburst Totem. So now I have my Riptides on cooldown. The next thing in my priority list is to cast Cloudburst Totem. So now we have that. We have a Cloudburst Totem down. We want to let that sit there. You can see that it has like a duration on it. It's going to bug out a little bit with my weak aura, but that's okay. You basically only want to press because you can cancel the Cloudburst Totem early like this and make the healing go off, because what Cloudburst Totem does is it will stack up our healing over time. So like if I just sit here and spam heal, you'll see the number going up. This is how much healing is stored inside the Cloudburst Totem. And then either when it expires or when we press the button, so I press the button early, it'll explode and do that healing split across everybody nearby. So the idea is usually you just leave the Cloudburst Totem alone and let it detonate on its own. The only time you should detonate it early is if someone is going to die if you don't detonate it. So if you're, you put down Cloudburst Totem, you're doing some healing, and then somebody's at 10% HP right now, and you don't have time to cast a healing surge on them, they are going to die at this moment or not, then that's when you would cancel Cloudburst Totem early. But otherwise, just let it do its thing. So that's what we do first. Our healing rotation is upkeep Riptide, keep it on cooldown as much as possible, using it on people who are injured or people who don't have an active Riptide on them because it is a heal over time. And then after that, we drop Cloudburst Totem. And then now what we do is we cast Healing Surge or Healing Wave for additional healing on people. So when someone needs healing, we just press Healing Surge. The only time you really press Healing Wave is one, if you have time to do it, and two, if you need to save mana. So if you're running low on mana and you don't have mana to sit here and cast Healing Surge, or like for high keys on tyrannical bosses and stuff where the bosses are going to last a lot longer and you need to preserve your mana a bit more, that's when you can do things like cast Healing Wave. But typically you should just default to Healing Surge because it's faster and does the same amount of healing as Healing Wave. So that is pretty much it for the healing cooldown, or the healing rotation. It's really that simple. Just keep Riptide on cooldown, press Cloudburst Totem, use Healing Surge and Healing Wave as filler spells while you wait for Riptide's cooldown to come back up, and while you build up Cloudburst Totem for more healing. So next up we have Cooldown Usage, which is really just Healing Tide Totem, Ascendance, and Spirit Link Totem. So starting off with Healing Tide Totem, this is not a very strong spell, so you shouldn't really rely on it too heavily as like a healing cooldown per se. Just kind of use it whenever the group needs healing. I would really just press this button as much as you can whenever everybody in the group is taking damage from something. And then Spirit Link Totem and Ascendance are going to be your actual cooldowns where you can like plan around them and whatnot. So Spirit Link Totem is going to usually be reserved for healing your tank or reducing the damage that the group takes from big like unavoidable group-wide mechanics. So Spirit Link Totem, we just drop it and it will split the health between everybody inside the totem. And then Ascendance is going to be our button that we press when we need to do healing for like the next, 5 or 10 seconds, and we need a lot of it. So it's going to do an initial burst of healing when we press the button, so it can be used as like an emergency, like, uh-oh, I don't have enough healing to keep everybody alive right now. We press Ascendance, they get some healing, and then we follow the exact same pattern. We keep Riptide on cooldown, we throw down a Cloudburst Totem, and then we start using Healing Surge. And that is pretty much it. So cooldown usage, don't be afraid to press these buttons. That's the biggest advice I can give for Resto Shamans. Is I see a lot of people hold these as like kind of uh-oh buttons, like they only press them in emergencies. You shouldn't think of it that way. You should try to utilize them more often and, try to fit them as a part of your like regular rotation almost whenever you feel like you need a little bit extra healing in certain situations. Okay, so next up we have our damage rotation. So for our damage rotation, it's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be Flame Shock. So we use Flame Shock. We keep this on cooldown. If there's multiple targets, then we can keep Flame Shock on multiple targets, like so. You can keep it going on about 3 targets at a time if you're using it instantly on cooldown. So like here, and then it'll fall off of this last target, and then we can refresh it kind of at the last second. So then we refresh it again. So upkeep Flame Shock on like 1 to 3 targets, however many you're fighting. And then after that, the next most important thing is using Lava Surge charges, which are these that are popping up right here, this icon. And all we do is press Lava Burst, and it will instant cast the Lava Burst. So our first priority, keep Flame Shock up. Don't worry too much about doing anything else for damage. And then just use these Lava Surge procs as you see them pop up. So when they pop up, throw out a Lava Burst. The next thing after we start maintaining Flame Shock and start using our Lava Surge charges is to actually cast Lava Burst itself. So that's to hard cast Lava Burst and keep it on cooldown. When my icon's red like this, that means that I have no charges. When it's yellow, that means I have 1 charge of Lava Burst. And then when it's not visible, that means I have 2 charges of Lava Burst. And if you get a Lava Surge charge like that in the middle, you can actually just cast 2 Lava Bursts back to back if you just spam the button. So that's what we do. And then after this, so now we're sitting here and we've used Flame Shock, we've used our Lava Surge charge, and we've also put Lava Burst on cooldown. So what do we do from here? Now we start pressing Chain Lightning if there's more than 1 target, and if we're only fighting 1 target, so if I'm only fighting this guy and there's no other mobs around, I keep Lava Burst on cooldown, and then I just start using Lightning Bolt. I got a Lava Surge charge, I use it, go back to Lightning Bolt. I got a Lava Burst charge up, I'm going to go ahead and use it. I'm going to refresh Flame Shock. Usually you wait to refresh it until it's pretty low, but I'm just using it there. Or you can like refresh it as you're moving around. That's another good time to refresh Flame Shock, is if you're forced to move out of mechanics and stuff. And then if we're fighting multiple targets like this, it's all the same thing. Keep Flame Shock on cooldown, use our Lava Surge charges, and then we're usually Lava Bursting whatever has the highest HP in the group. If they're all the same, then it doesn't really matter. And then we use Chain Lightning whenever we don't have anything else to do. And that is it. And you Chain Lightning anytime there's more than one target. So even if you're fighting 2 targets, Chain Lightning is a better spell to press than Lightning Bolt. Cool. So next up, we're going to talk about our legendary usage. So the 2 main legendaries that we'll be running. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up this VOD that I have, if I can find it. Here it is. Just a moment. I believe it is this one here. Yeah, we'll use this one. So this is going to be for Chains of Devastation. That's what I'm running right up here. And that's going to be the instant cast lightning, Chain Lightning or Chain Heal, depending on whichever spell you cast last, which if you can't tell yet, then the whole gameplay is you get a free Chain Lightning. You use Chain Lightning for free, or not free. You use it instant cast, and then it gives you an instant cast Chain Heal, and then an instant cast Chain Lightning, and then an instant cast Chain Heal. And you just bounce back and forth pressing those 2 spells. So basically the way that the gameplay works for this is you should be just pretty much spamming them. You just have to be mindful of your mana. And then you're chain healing whoever needs healing in the group. If no one needs healing, then you just press it to, just to utilize it. And then we use Chain Heal, or Chain Lightning. And you're just spamming the abilities back and forth. And that's pretty much how you do healing too, is you pretty much just keep Riptide on cooldown, keep a Cloudburst Totem on the ground. As you can see here, I have a Cloudburst down, and then I'm just spamming Chain Lightning and then using Chain Heal on people that need healing, and still following the same idea. So it's almost like you neglect Healing Surge and Healing Wave a little bit more. You still can use Healing Surge as like an emergency heal, or like if one person is taking more damage and Chain Heal isn't going to be enough to heal them, then that's when you would use Healing Surge. But that's pretty much it for the gameplay for Chains of Devastation. You can, if you want to min-max your damage with it, you can try to avoid pressing things like Cloudburst Totem and Healing Tide Totem and Spirit Link Totem, and like try to keep all your cooldowns or all your totems off cooldown, because then when you cast Chain Heal with your tier bonus, it's going to only reduce the cooldown of Vesper Totem, which means you get Vesper Totem back up really, really fast. But that's mostly like a low-key thing, because you can't keep... you can't just not use Cloudburst Totem and Spirit Link and Healing Tide Totem on high keys. Like it just won't work a lot of the time. But that's the idea. If you want to min-max your damage, you can do stuff like that with it. So that's that legendary. And then for Deep Tremor Stone, this legendary is really, really simple. You're going to literally just press Earth Elemental on cooldown. So here I press Earth Elemental. It has an Earthquake around it. I got this weak aura that tracks its HP so that if it starts dying, I know. And then usually what I do is, because you can't target this specifically, like I can't sit here and heal my Earth Elemental with this weak aura, it doesn't let me. So what I usually do is when I summon the Earth Elemental, I'll try to target it. I know there's macros too that you can use and stuff, but I'll target the Earth Elemental, and then I'll use a focus macro to target it as a focus, and then now I can just heal it from here. So now I'm just healing it. And the weak aura is going to be a little bit buggy because of its HP. It gets like an increased HP thing, and the weak aura doesn't track it properly. But the idea remains the same, is like you want to try to heal the Earth Elemental if you're using it during trash. Basically, if you're using it during trash, it's going to pull threat, and you're going to need to heal it. If you're doing it during a boss, then it will not grab threat or aggro or anything like that, and you won't have to heal it. So on bosses, it's really, really simple. On trash, though, I definitely recommend finding a way to like focus it quickly without too much hassle, and then that way you have an easy way to heal it. And that is it for the legendary usage. And then for improving further, just stop by the Discord. We have a community Discord that's linked down in the description below. And we have a channel where you can drop, logs and VODs. And we also have a bunch already in there that everybody can read through, where we've done VOD and log reviews for Resto Shamans in Mythic Plus, in Raid, all that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to see how you can improve further after that, you can post a log in there, or you can just look at the ones that we already have archived in there and see, what else what other information you can take from it. So Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm sorry that this is long overdue. I should have done this a while ago, but in the future, I definitely plan to roll these guides out a lot faster as the patches come out and stuff, while still being able to provide enough information that is relevant for the entire patch. So thank you so much for watching. See you guys later. Have a good one.